welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
And look, if you are listening to this right now, I'm guessing you're probably tired of the usual noise.
Yeah, the sanitized stuff.
Exactly. The safe approved narratives that just seem to be everywhere these days. So today we are going completely off the map.
We really are.
We're looking at a text that, well, it's not just a retro gaming review. Honestly, to call it a review is an insult. It's a manifesto.
It is a manifesto. It's a cultural critique disguised as a love letter to the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis.
Right.
But make no mistake, the whole love letter aspect, that's just the delivery mechanism for some extremely heavy philosophy.
Oh, absolutely. We are diving deep into 16-bit fun. It's all you need by Conrad Riker. And before we even crack this open, I just have to say, if you want to keep finding these kinds of deep dives,
The ones that actually unpack the stuff nobody else wants to touch.
right, exactly, then you need to hit that like and subscribe button right now. Seriously, you have to help us beat the algorithm so we can keep bringing you this kind of content.
And regarding the source material today, Riker describes this book as an ultra-long, incisive look at how video games explain the rise and fall of Western civilization.
Yeah,
It's dense, it's aggressive, and it is genuinely fascinating.
it is incredibly heavy. And look, we're going to do our best to summarize it today, impartially, just looking at the arguments. But if you want the full, unfiltered, red-pilled download,
Airing the whole thing.
the whole thing, you need to buy this ebook right now. It is available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. Just search for 16-bit fun. It's all you need.
Yeah, highly recommend reading the primary source here.
Because what we're doing today is just scratching the surface of what Riker calls a weapon against the encroaching dark.
Which is quite the phrase.
It is. So set the stage for us. What is the core thesis of this deep dive?
Right, so the central thesis here is that the 16-bit era, so we're talking roughly the early 90s.
Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis.
Exactly. That this wasn't just a step in technological progress. Riker calls it the digital Parthenon.
The digital Parthenon. That's a massive claim to make.
It is.
He's putting Super Mario World on the same level as Greek architecture.
In terms of what it represents culturally, yes.
Yeah.
He argues that this specific era was the peak of Western meritocracy and objective truth.
Okay.
The argument is that before our institutions were, as he puts it, captured by feminists and Marxists, we had this pristine moment of digital clarity.
And he talks a lot about this concept of gynocentric control, right?
Yes, gynocentric control, and how modern gaming has essentially turned men into NPCs.
NPCs, non-player characters, the background extras who just do what they're told.
Exactly. Men who have no real agency, who are just following a script written by somebody else. Riker connects the dots between the actual microchip and the decline of masculinity in a way I have honestly never seen before.
Wild. And by the way, if you want to follow this ongoing cultural battle directly from the source, the author is really active on Substack at Conrad and Riker. But let's get into the hardware.
Let's do it.
Because this is where the philosophy actually starts, and this part blew my mind.
Yeah, it's an incredibly unique angle.
Usually when people talk about the Sega Genesis or the Super Nintendo, they're talking about, colors or sound channels, flash processing.
Right, the marketing terms.
Yeah. But Riker starts with the actual physical chips. The Motorola 68000 and the Ricoh 5A22.
Right, but he doesn't talk about them like an engineer. He talks about them like a philosopher.
How so?
Well, he argues that this hardware directly represents the Aristotelian law of excluded middle.
Okay, hold on. We definitely need to unpack that for the listener.
Sure.
How does a 16-bit processor relate to Aristotle?
It comes down to the binary nature of reality. In the 16-bit architecture, a pixel, a value, a state, it is either completely on or completely off.
Right.
It's FF or 00 in hex. There's no maybe. There is no quote-unquote my truth. There is only the truth.
So it's rigid.
Entirely rigid. Riker's point is that the hardware enforces a worldview where objective reality is inescapable.
So the machine literally doesn't care about your opinion.
It physically cannot care. And Riker contrasts this with modern concepts like queer theory or subjective fluidity. He says modern leftists operate on emotional reasoning.
Which he compares to software bugs, right?
Exactly. He likens emotional reasoning to software bugs. They try to process null values as valid data. They want to say that a thing can be both A and not A at the very same time, just depending on how they feel about it.
And the 16-bit console just says error.
It crashes. If you tried to tell a Sega Genesis that a voltage was something it wasn't, the system crashed. It did not negotiate.
That is fascinating.
And Riker claims this was essentially a training ground for the male mind. It immunized young men against the idea that feelings can override physics,
He calls the cartridge the most honest thing in the world.
because it never lies to you.
He uses Tetris as an example of this too, which
Yeah.
I found interesting because Tetris is so abstract.
Yeah, I looked at Tetris. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mario. He views Dr. Mario specifically as a lesson in the law of identity.
Okay, break that down.
So you have a virus in the game. It is red. To kill it, you need a red pill. If you drop a blue pill on it because you feel like it should work,
Or because you want to subvert expectations.
right. If you do that, you lose. The game ends.
You fail.
You fail. And Riker argues that the female-coded left rejects this kind of rigid categorization. They want the blue pill to count as red if it identifies as red.
Wow.
But for the masculine mind, according to the book, this sorting of reality, this rigid application of logic, is essential for basic sanity.
Which leads directly into his next big theme, which is the psychology of competence. Because if the machine is that rigid, that means the player has to adapt to the machine. The machine isn't going to adapt to you.
Precisely. Riker argues that technical limitations forced excellence. Because the hardware was so constrained, developers had to be disciplined. Code had to be tight.
Gameplay had to be perfect.
And he contrasts this with modern games, which he describes as bloated.
100 gigabyte downloads for a game that's completely broken on launch.
Right. But it goes much deeper than just the file size. It's about the philosophy of difficulty. Riker spends a lot of time analyzing the game over screen.
Oh man, Contra 3, the Alien Wars.
I know.
I think anyone listening who grew up in the 90s just had a visceral flashback to that game.
It was absolutely brutal. And Riker recounts playing in that game, specifically the fight against the Red Falcon brain.
Sweaty palms, throwing the controller at the wall.
All of it, the rage. But here's the key insight from the text. He calls that frustration a baptism of fire.
Baptism of fire. So that implies it changes you fundamentally.
He says it strips away narcissism. Think about it. When you see that game over screen, the universe is telling you, you are not good enough yet.
It doesn't offer to lower the difficulty for you.
No, it doesn't give you a participation trophy. It just kills you. Riker says this destroys the fragile ego.
So in his view, the modern approach to gaming, where you can save anywhere or rewind time or adjust the difficulty on the fly, he thinks that's actually damaging men.
Oh, he goes further than that. He calls the save state the tool of the devil.
That is aggressive. The tool of the devil.
Well, think about his logic. A save state lets you erase a mistake. It removes the consequence of failure. Riker argues that if you remove the consequence, you inherently remove the possibility of virtue.
Right, because there are no stakes.
Exactly. He presents this syllogism of character formation. He says resilience requires controllable failure. You have to be able to fail, and it has to hurt so that you can learn how to overcome it.
He cites some psychology on this too, doesn't he?
He does. He cites Robert Eisenberger and this concept of learned industriousness.
Learn industriousness.
Yeah. The research suggests that struggling through a difficult task creates a generalized work ethic. So if you beat Contra 3, you essentially wire your brain to believe that intense effort actually leads to success.
And the opposite of that.
The opposite is what Riker calls the walking simulator. Modern narrative games where you just push forward on the stick and experience a story.
Where you literally can't lose.
Right. He calls these pacifiers. They treat the player like a child, or worse, like a passive consumer who just needs to be coddled.
Gynocentric coddling, I believe, is the exact phrase he uses.
That is the phrase. He argues that by removing the possibility of loss, modern gaming creates men who crumble the moment they face real-world adversity.
Because they expect a restart button that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Man. Okay, so this idea of guidance and structure, it brings us to what was probably the most interesting part of the book for me, the fatherhood principle.
This is a crucial pivot in his manifesto.
He claims there is a conspiracy of silence regarding fathers in media.
Yeah, he moves from the individual struggle of the player to the broader societal structure. He points to classic RPGs like Secret of Mana and Chrono Trigger.
Okay.
In these stories, you almost always have a mentor archetype, a sage, a master, a father figure.
Like the guru of time in Chrono Trigger.
Perfect example. And the important thing about the mentor in these games is that he doesn't just give you the power.
Right, he withholds it.
He tests you. He only hands over the sword or the magic when the hero has proven he is competent enough to wield it. It's an actual rite of passage.
And Riker contrasts this with modern stories where the hero is just naturally special from birth.
Or where power is given without merit, yeah.
Yeah.
But the data he presents in this section is what's really shocking.
Right, the completion rates. Lay those out for us.
The book claims that games with strong, positive father figures or mentors
Yeah.
have a 62% completion rate among male players.
62%.
Games without them, where the protagonist is just sort of wandering without any hierarchical guidance, only 28%.
Wow, 28%. That is a massive discrepancy. So the data he's looking at suggests that the male mind effectively craves that hierarchical guidance.
It craves the structure. It wants to know there is a path and that a competent authority is showing the way. But Riker argues there's an active war on fathers in the industry.
And he pinpoints a specific year for the shift,
1994.
which was the introduction of the ESRB ratings, the moral panic era.
Right. I mean, parents freaking out about Mortal Kombat and Night Trap.
Right, the hearings.
Riker argues that the ESRB was the beginning of the end. He says it shifted gaming from martial training, the simulation of combat and strategy, to moralistic censorship.
So it was the moment the industry started apologizing for its own existence.
Yes. And he backs this up with workforce statistics that are pretty damning to his point.
Yeah. What are those numbers again?
He claims that while 76% of these actual game developers, the writing the code, building the engines, are male, 68% of the diversity officers and HR administrators in these companies are female.
So the people doing the structural work are men.
But the people making the rules are women. He calls it an administrative layer of structural gynocentrism.
Okay.
Basically, you have men building these intricate logical systems, but then a bureaucratic layer comes in to devalue masculine narratives, tone down the violence, and ensure everything is quote-unquote safe and inclusive.
Which effectively castrates the art form, according to the book.
That is Riker's conclusion. He says it turns a meritocratic playground into a monitored nursery.
Speaking of playgrounds, let's talk about the console wars. Because Sega versus Nintendo was huge. And Riker reframes this in a way I hadn't thought about before. He says this tribalism was actually a good thing.
A completely necessary thing. He references Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Riker argues that the Sega versus Nintendo war wasn't just marketing, it was a dialectic process. You had thesis Nintendo and antithesis Sega.
And we were the soldiers in that war. I mean, I remember actual shouting matches in the schoolyard.
Oh, totally.
Blast processing versus mode 7. We sounded like little lawyers.
And that is exactly what he calls the playground agora.
The agora.
Right. He argues those arguments were a Socratic seminar for boys. You had to pick a side, you had to research your facts.
Even if the facts were just marketing terms from a magazine that we barely understood.
Exactly. But you had to defend your hierarchy against an opponent. You learned rhetoric. You learned how to stand your ground.
And crucially, nobody stepped in to say, hey guys, both consoles are valid.
Right. There was no everyone is a winner mentality. One console was better, the other was worse, and you had to prove it.
Which is very different from today.
Completely different. He contrasts this wild west of trash talk with today's sanitized surveillance. He says modern online spaces are like feelings bars.
Feelings bars.
Places where the goal isn't to determine truth or quality, but just to validate everyone's identity. If you criticize a game today, you're often accused of attacking the identity of the developers or the fan base.
Right.
Riker says this completely destroys the capacity for critical thought.
He makes a comparison here that I thought was brilliant. It's the difference between the Konami code and the share button.
Oh, the linguistic shibboleth?
Yeah, up, down, left, right, BA, start.
A classic.
Yeah.
Riker calls that code a Masonic handshake, knowing it meant you were part of the Brotherhood.
Right, because you had to learn it from a magazine or from a friend at recess. It was shared esoteric knowledge.
Exactly. Versus the share button on a PS5 controller.
Which he says is just pure narcissism.
Pure narcissism.
Yeah.
It's not about shared knowledge anymore. It's about broadcasting your mundane achievements for empty validation. The Konami code helped you overcome a challenge and win. The share button just screams, look at me.
Okay, so we have this picture of a lost world. A world of merit, of brutal difficulty, strong fathers, and healthy conflict. The big question the book asks is, how did we lose it?
Right.
Riker has a very specific theory about the NPC menace and institutional capture.
This is definitely the most politically charged part of the book. He brings in Antonio Gramsci and the Frankfurt School.
So we're talking about the long march through the institutions.
Exactly. The idea that you don't win by a violent revolution, you win by slowly taking over the culture from within.
Okay.
Riker argues that cultural hegemony infiltrated gaming journalism starting around 2007. He directly attacks outlets like IGN, Kotaku, and the Game Developers Conference.
The gatekeepers of the industry.
Right. He claims they stopped reviewing games, based on simple question like, is this fun? And they started reviewing them based on adherence to dogma.
So it became a political litmus test.
Exactly. If a game doesn't fit the correct political message, it gets docked points. Or worse, the developers are publicly attacked.
And he brings up Gamergate in this context, doesn't he?
He does. He describes Gamergate as the Thermopylae of the digital age.
Thermopylae, like the 300 Spartans holding the pass against the Persian army.
That's his exact comparison. In his view, it was the first violent collision between masculine logos, reason, logic, merit, and feminine pathos, emotion, narrative, victimhood.
So he sees Gamergate as a defensive stand.
He argues that gamers were the first group to actually notice the long march happening and collectively say no.
And he draws a line directly from that to modern controversies like Sweet Baby Inc.
Yes, the modern narrative consultancy firms.
Mhm.
He argues these groups are the enforcers. Well, they come into a studio and say, that female character is too sexy, or that storyline is too masculine, or you need more representation here. And because of ESG scores and corporate fear, the studios just comply.
And the result of this compliance is what Riker calls the Skinner box.
The final trap. He compares a game like Streets of Rage 2 to a modern live service game. Streets of Rage 2 is what he calls a clockwork universe.
Right. It has strict laws, hit boxes, consistency.
And if you master the clockwork, you win.
But modern games are just dopamine loops.
They're casinos. Riker argues they are actively designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities. They don't want you to get better, they just want you to stay addicted.
Hooking you with loot boxes and battle passes.
Right, they don't build character at all.
He says the former builds the man, and the latter consumes him.
Exactly. And that is why he calls modern gamers NPCs. They are trapped in these loops, repeating the corporate mantras of diversity and inclusion while consuming soulless products that actually hate them.
It is a terrifying picture he paints. It's basically the Matrix.
It is.
But Riker doesn't just leave us in the pod. He offers a way out. He calls it the 16-bit Renaissance Protocol. What is the solution here?
The protocol is fairly straightforward, but it's definitely not easy. It's a conscious return to objective difficulty.
Okay.
It's about completely rejecting the open world postmodern confusion where you can do anything but nothing really matters,
Yeah.
and embracing games that, as he puts it, don't care about your pronouns.
So it's voting with your wallet and your time.
Yes. He says we need to archive the DNA of this dead civilization. We need to play these classic games, understand why they were built that way, and reject the participation trophy mindset in every single aspect of life.
Retraining your brain.
Retraining it to accept binary outcomes. You either win or you lose.
It is a really powerful call to action. And look, to the listener, if this conversation has sparked something in you, if you are nodding along right now thinking, yeah, I remember when games respected me, then you need to get the full manifesto.
Absolutely. We've only covered the highlights. The book is 16-Bit Fun, It's All You Need by Conrad Riker. And you can find it right now on Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books.
Seriously, go buy it, support the work, and don't just read it. Join the fight. Riker is building a whole community around this. You can follow his crusade on Substack at Conrad and Riker, and you can check him out on Twitter at Conrad Riker.
He's putting out the exact kind of content that the algorithm actively tries to hide. You really have to go look for it.
And speaking of the algorithm, that applies to us too. We are trying to impartially explore the conversations and the texts that mainstream media just won't touch. So if you want us to keep doing these deep dives, you have to support us.
Like, subscribe, leave a review.
Yes, it really helps break the censorship algorithm. Now, we're going to leave you with one final thought from the book, something for you to chew on as you go about your week.
This is a great closing quote.
Riker writes, "The cartridge does not negotiate. The machine ignores your feelings. In a world of participation trophies, are you brave enough to face a game over screen?"
That is the real question. Are you ready to lose in order to learn how to win?
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.